What's up, y'all? It's your girl Amanda, and we are back with another episode of Mandy's Entertainment Reviews. So, for this episode, we are doing the Stax documentary Soulsville USA. Now, this documentary was released in May of 2024 on HBO Max. I did watch this documentary before. The thing is, I kind of paid attention, but then I not paid attention, then I paid attention. I did kind of touch on it on Thompson and stuff, but it was just a touch. I really would love to do a entertainment review episode just so I can go into details. And also, as I was watching this, I did learn, and like I was actually paying attention. Like I learned some interesting facts that I really, really want to cover. So again, it was on HBO Max, released back in 2024. And this is another great documentary that HBO Max has done, and I've learned like way more facts. Like it's not even our like our Black History books and stuff. So many facts that's not Black History. When I was in school, Black History Month, we covered the basic 5 people, or maybe 3. Martin Luther King, Rosa Parks, Thurgood Marshall. Martin Luther King, Rosa Parks, Thurgood Marshall. We didn't hear nothing about Otis Redding, Al Bell, um, Isaac Hayes. We heard nothing about these individuals. So thank God that HBO has made this documentary. So you can learn like way more in a history of an independent Black record label from Memphis that gave an opportunity for Black people to be wealthy. Just saying. So, as you guys know, I do my documentary reviews and want to know and learn. If you did not learn that, you probably was eating crayons in first grade. Anyway, so we'll start with no. So what I know is that Stax is a big soul record company in Memphis. It was in the hood, actually. Stax was right in a Black neighborhood. And they had like their studios and their offices set up there. They had big stars like Otis Redding, Isaac Hayes, Johnny Taylor, Carla Thomas, Rufus Thomas. Let's see what else. The Barkeys, Rufus Thomas, Barkeys, Isaac Hayes. Just a lot of great. Oh, the lady who made Woman to Woman. Hello, Barbara. This is Shirley. You know, your man was at my house. Blah blah blah. So they had those stars. Black Wealth was also included with Stax Records. So Isaac Hayes passed away in like 2006. I remember some years later seeing Isaac Hayes' car in pictures at a museum. It was like a gold Cadillac or something. And then the other artists, they drove like Cadillacs and Rolls Royces, and they wore furs. In Memphis, I never understood why, because Memphis is in the South. It doesn't get hot down there. So why are you wearing a fur? Isaac Hayes wrote a lot of the music there. He wrote his own music as well. He wrote Hold On, I'm Coming, Sam and Dave. Just all the hits that Stax he wrote. There is a museum in Memphis, a Stax museum. It resembles the actual Stax building, but it's the museum they like probably. But I have a question though, because it was demolished. How did they save some of the like actual stuff they used if it was demolished? And then with Al Bell, the freaking I don't know. I, it was never covered in the documentary, not to my knowledge. But if anybody knows like how stuff got saved for the museum, please let me know. I would really love to know. I always wanted to go to the Stax Museum too. My grandmother, my dad's mother, was actually born in Memphis. I do have family in Memphis that I don't know very well because so I know like literally 5 years ago I just found out my grandmother, who died when I was 11, she had relatives. So I don't know them well. I know they're there. I know for a fact they're there. And actually on both sides I have family in Memphis because my other grandmother was born in the South too. So but I always wanted to go. Hopefully I get to go to Memphis and see the Stax Museum. From Jason Alexander from the Barcades is actually the rapper or hip hop star Jazzy Faye's father. And I looked at him in the documentary. I was like, yeah, Jazzy Faye kind of looks like him. Looks just like his dad. Otis Redding, who's one of the Stax's biggest stars, he died in a plane crash in the Midwest. I think it was Wisconsin. They did find his body and they had a funeral for him. And Isaac Hayes, And Johnny Taylor died of heart attack. Isaac Hayes again died in 2006. Johnny Taylor actually died in 2000. He was like 64 and he was doing radio in Texas. I do know that for a fact. What I want to know is the startup. What happened to the record label post Otis Redding? Any songs that I know that was written by Isaac that I didn't know? What does the Stax building look like now? Which we know was torn down, but I will cover that again. And what is the future for Stax's legacy? So this documentary was 4 parts. I actually took a lot of notes, so this is kind of gonna be a long episode. So this is what I learned. It was founded by Jim Stewart, who moved from like Middle Tennessee to Memphis, and he was playing in a band. And he started Stax with his sister Estelle. And if you guys don't know where the name Stax come from, is Stewart and Axton. Estelle's last name, I think she was married to somebody with the last name Axton. So I also put that in there. Um, He recorded a song probably in like the 1950s, 1940s. It was called Blue Roses. And it kind of sounded like Elvis. He kind of sounded like Elvis on record, but it did not sell well. Obviously, because, kind of, that was kind of like a recession, depression point, and not a lot of people could afford records. I'm just assuming. An Ampex tape recorder was high quality equipment back then, which I find that weird because if you record anything on a tape recorder and the quality just sounds terrible, unless you get like a really, 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 really high like tech tape recorder, and I don't even think tape recorders exist anymore because you got to buy the little recorder thingy and then you got to buy the tape for the recorder. And where can you find tape? Like Amazon? Who knows? um Satellite Records. So if you go to like, I guess they have it for the museum too. Satellite Records was a little record shop. It actually helped to pay for Stax. And I think that is kind of smart, to have something that'll help pay besides you having to pay for something out of your pocket or out of the business expenses. Rufus Thomas was a DJ in Memphis. I like Rufus Thomas do the Funky Chicken. I had that in my Apple Music. And honestly, I'm not surprised to find this out because Rufus Thomas did have the personality and like the voice for radio. Because how do you think people tune into a radio station? You have to have personality, you have to have fun. And when you listen to Do the Funky Chicken, that record is like my mother's age and it just still sounds so fun to listen to and dance to. So I think overall Rufus Thomas had a very, very, very fun personality, and that's what made him stand out as the talent at Stax Records. From the 1950s to the 1960s, Atlantic Records ran black music. I did not know that about Atlantic. I knew Atlantic Records was around for like a long time, but with how they ran black music during that time, and also that was the era of the young Ray Charles. You know, we all know we hit the road, Jack, and that one song that be in all the commercials. So I really, that was really interesting. Atlantic Records, that's just something that sounds so white. Ran black music. There was music videos for Stax Records in the 1960s. I didn't know music video. I always assumed that music videos was always a thing in the 80s. It was started in the 80s and then we ran with it until now. But it was actually back in the 60s, maybe the 70s too, because the Jacksons had Blame It on the Boogie, that video. But I didn't know they had them in the 60s. They were like in black and white and they weren't as fun and they looked like concerts. But they were there. Very basic and not where we are today, where there's women half naked and booty shaking and all that stuff. But hey, the 60s had them, and I wonder what channel they came on. Or do you go to a movie theater to watch them? Because, back in the 60s, there's only like 3 channels. I wonder about that. If anybody is born in the 60s, let me know how y'all watch those videos. Green Onions by the Booker T's. That song was made in 1962, and I tell you, when you watch a sports car commercial or anything that have to do with something fast, they're still being played now in 2025. So Booker T is still getting his money. So that's good to know about that. Let's see. Otis Redding's first single did not do well. These Arms Are Mine. These Arms of Mine, is it Are Mine or Of Mine? It didn't do well, which kind of shocks me, but not really, because every time someone does something, they're like really successful. It's sometimes that first something does not do well. So I guess that the victim of that curse was These Arms Are Mine. And I do like that song. I don't understand how it didn't do well. And then again, going back to the videos of Otis Redding in the videos, I didn't know that there was a video for Sad Song. Fast. I keep singing this sad song. I heard that song for the first time when I was in college, and I took African American music, and I was going through the classes thinking, "Ooh, African American music. I've been listening to soul music, hip hop, R&B my whole life. This should be pretty easy." Wrong. They started all the way back to like the slave hymns and stuff, and I didn't do well at that part. And then the class stopped in music in the 70s, so I kind of did okay in that part. I wish it would have went on to like the 80s and the 90s and the 2000s. I would have like really excelled in that class. But that's the first time I heard that song. I always knew Sitting on the Dock of the Bay. I always knew These Arms Are Mine, but I never knew that song. And that ended up really becoming one of my favorite Otis Redding songs ever. Like number one favorite over Otis Redding song. Al Bell, who basically became the man that run the show, but he started off as a radio DJ helping music get played to the masses. So that just confirmed to me that Al Bell has been working hard in the music business for a long, long time. Because if you're helping music get played to the masses, that means you got some barriers to break down. True that. True that. Isaac Hayes was a sharp dresser back in the day. Okay, so I grew up, I'm born in the 90s, right? So sorry, I was gonna say Al. Isaac Hayes, I knew from when I was a kid, like before I really got into his music, I knew Isaac Hayes as Chef from South Park. But as I got older in my 20s, because like my dad is a Isaac Hayes fan, I started really listening to his music. And I started seeing like pictures of Isaac back in the day, and he really was a sharp dresser. Like he was in furs and nice suits and nice leisure wear and all that stuff. So that's what Sam Moore said. Sam Moore from Sam and Dave. Stax was in competition with Motown. So the way that they compared it in the documentary, I gotta take a sip. The way they compared it in the documentary, it's like the nuclear family has two kids, has two sisters. One sister is polished, that's Motown, and one sister is Stax, the messy rock and roll one. So that's how they kind of compared them. But I think honestly there shouldn't have been competition between the two record labels. They made a lot of money and a lot of hits that are played in commercials, TV shows, and all that stuff to this day. 2025, like 50 years later. So they always compared that to them. Otis Redding has a version of Respect, which he did right, and then I didn't know the one that I've been hearing my whole life by Aretha Franklin was a cover. Let's see. Soul was written on buildings to not burn up in riots in the 60s, and that was also the inspo for the Soul Man song. So the reason why that stood out to me as well is because I actually lived through the riots of George Floyd, right? So I remember driving through my neighborhood in the aftermath of everything. And I remember seeing black on black on black on black on written on windows. And I'm like, well, your place is not, vandalized, but why would you vandalize it? It's to protect the business from not being looted, burned down, or anything. So that basically taught me that this function or this way of saving your business, it's not new. They've been doing it for years, just with different wording. Soul Man, I'm a soul man. Da, 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 da. I'm a soul. I didn't know that was inspired by that song as well. Otis Redding played in front of a rock audience in 1967 in Monterey and also got a standing ovation. There is a documentary out called Monterey 1967. I think it's on HBO Max. I know it's definitely on Amazon Prime. I should really, really check that out. And for him to get a standing ovation in that type of crowd, awesome. Otis Redding was a countryman. I saw the video of him in his overalls. He had pigs and chickens and a whole farm down in Georgia. I knew he was country, but I didn't know he was that country, you know. I wanted to just say that. His last TV appearance was on TV Upbeat in Cleveland. I saw that footage for years. I didn't know what it was exactly. Every time I see black and white footage of like older, um, like older music acts, I always assume it was like Soul Train or something, or some concert TV series that came on one night only. But no, it was on a TV show, called Upbeat in Cleveland. That was his last appearance. There was a survivor in the plane crash. His name was Ben Colley. I always thought for years, because I knew Otis Redding died in a plane crash. I thought everybody died, like all the Barkays died. But no, there was one guy. His name was Ben Colley, but he ended up actually passing away in 2015. I guess from a heart attack or old age or something. Memphis had a worker strike, a sanitation worker strike, and also music and inspiration from music came from that as well. Stax Records artists hung out at the Lorraine Hotel. I really did not know that because I thought, the hotel was just like a regular hotel, and we didn't hear a lot of history of it. All we know about the Lorraine Hotel, if like you were brainwashed with three people for Black History, Rosa Parks, Thurgood Marshall, Martin Luther King, all you know about the Lorraine Hotel was that that was where Martin Luther King got assassinated, and that's it. And it's in the Memphis museum. I've never been, but for me, I guess I could speak for me. That was like the only history I got at the Lorraine Motel. I didn't know that Stax Records artists hung out there. It was Al Bell's idea to be independent, which was kind of unheard of back in that time. Like nowadays with the rappers we have and the artists we have, they go independent, it's like celebrated. But back in the day, like to be an independent record label, that was kind of like a scary idea because maybe, you may make it or you may flop. So that was Al Bell's idea. Also Clarence Avant was involved with Stax Records to get them to Paramount. And Clarence Avant is the Black Godfather of Black music. If you never saw his documentary on Netflix, it is so good. And also, he has a daughter named Nicole, and she's married to like the CEO of Netflix or something. So it's a very powerful family over there. Stax also had a female writer. Her name was Betty Crutcher. And another fun fact about Betty Crutcher is that she wrote Who's Making Love by Johnny Taylor. Now, for years, I know that song. And I always thought Johnny wrote that song from like a male's mentality. But nope, it was Betty Crutcher. And that, I always thought that song was like on some reverse psychology stuff, like for real. So I didn't know a woman wrote that song. Um, Isaac Hayes was a producer and a songwriter first. Then he became a singer, and it was all thanks to Al Bell. And you know what? Thank you, Al Bell, because if it wasn't for you telling Isaac to make an album, we would not have the classic hits that we hear now, like Shaft or Hyperbolic Silicon. I never knew how to say that song, don't judge me. And what else? I love Never Can Say Goodbye. Now, that was written by, y'all didn't know this, I wrote it down too, Clifton Davis. If you don't know that name, that is the guy from That's My Mama. And if you watch the soaps like me, that's the grandfather slash husband on Beyond the Gates. So yeah, he wrote songs like that too. Um, the Bar-Kays came back with new members, so basically they revived their careers, just with new members. Hyperbolic Silicon, that song by Isaac Hayes, I don't know how to sing it, is actually a sample of DJ Quick's Born and Raised in Compton. Now that I knew for years. I just wanted to share that with y'all because I love DJ Quick. Walk On By was originally recorded by Dionne Warwick. I never really listened to Dionne Warwick's music, but once they played like the snippet of it, I'm like, oh, okay. So I think in a way, Isaac just stacks it up. Dionne Warwick had like her New Jersey flair on it, but Isaac stacked it up. 28 albums were produced in a short amount of time. So let me explain that. Let me tell y'all this. Y'all want to argue that, oh, Master P is the GOAT for putting out all these artists' albums in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 months or whatever. They following the blueprint, which is Stax Records. Just saying. Because, Stax did it first, then Master P. Then I want to say Young Money, Cash Money, but my memory could fail me. Stax record logo is actually inspired from Al Bell's Fingertips, because he said something about Stax Records, we want to make music like that, and he snapped his finger, and that's the logo. Simple as more, basically. That's how they made it. Then Al became VP, and that's, I guess, the final era of Stax Records, because Estelle Exton left. She felt like she didn't have any influence or say for the music, but it was successful. Like, why, if you're complaining, if it's successful, why are you, like, pointing out the negative? That's what I wanted to know. So if you guys remember back in the day, Isaac Hayes wore chains a lot. He did say that the chains represents the bondage and the captivity of a black man. So I always thought it was jewelry, but it represents that. James Alexander, so Jazzy Faye's dad, he played the guitar on Shaft. And another thing I want to say, don't y'all judge me. I'm young. I didn't really know until I was older. Shaft is Richard Roundtree, not Isaac. Isaac just sang the song. Okay, I get that. Because I remember when Richard Roundtree died, I told my mother, because I know Richard Roundtree from being Mary Jane. My mother was like, Shaft is dead. Like, that's when I knew. That's when I knew. Stax had an office in Los Angeles, so they wanted to expand their offices to LA, and then they had I'm sorry. Yeah, they wanted to expand their offices to LA. I don't think that was a good idea, because I think around that time, who also moved to LA and became very successful? Motown. Just saying. There was a Watts Rebellion in 1965. So I never knew about that. No one ever talked to me about Watts Rebellion. So for that, I know that there was some sort of riot in Watts, but Watts Rebellion never came up in conversation. Jim Stewart sold his shares to Al, so to basically get out of the industry. Clive Davis was mentioned. He wanted to help Al Bell with his distribution deal. And then once Clive stepped in, that's when Stax expanded their genres. They were doing country, spoken word. They had like a couple Richard Pryor comedy albums, which I've heard a couple times. And I think they had Bill Cosby too. So they basically started the whole comedy album thing. Clive Davis's successor. So I read Clive Davis's book, and basically he was fired on some accusations of like some mishandling of funds. And once Clive Davis left, his successors wanted to negotiate a new deal with Al Bell, which that was also the beginning of the end for Stax Records. So CBS put a distribution on hold for music, which means there was no new albums coming out to be sold in the record shops, which back in the day there was no streaming. So that was kind of crucial on album sales. And he was also offered a VP corporation position that he did not really take right away. So CBS cut off Stax, and then UP Bank started having money issues, and then there was an employee. This was a mess, okay? He had an employee forging checks, and then the money was stolen from Stax's account, and then somehow Al Bell got indicted for conspiracy to bank fraud, which I understand. Like, if you are being indicted for something you did not do, like, it would kind of drive you to suicide. But luckily Al said he grabbed his Bible instead of his gun, And, things got worse. Employees got fired, lost their jobs. And then one day, the federal officers came to visit the Stax Records office, and they took the master tapes. And yeah, that was the end of Stax Records as it was. Basically, it closed in 1975. The building got demolished, but Al ended up being acquitted. Jim Stewart ended up losing his home. He had to work a regular job, blah, blah, blah. And then the museum opened in 2003. So that's what I learned. But that was at the end of the documentary. But I want to learn, like, what happened from 1975 to 2003. They didn't really say. Like, what happened to the master tapes? What's the artist doing now? I thought that was like a big jump. Um, so yeah, that's my review of Stack's documentary again. It was a documentary I did see. I just wanted to make a want to know, learned episode for the Mandy's Entertainment Review podcast. I do give this documentary a 5 out of 5. I do love the detail history. It was 4 parts, so there was plenty of time to give detail, except what happened from 1975 to 2003. And I don't care if nothing happened from 1975 until 2003. Put something in the gap. Good Lord. Um, I loved hearing the music involved. I do have a lot of stacks in my Apple Music. And what I didn't like about the episode or this documentary is at the ending of the Stax Records and how we don't know what happened from 1975 to 2003 when the stinking museum opened. That's all I want to know. If anybody has any information, because I love that y'all interact with me in the comments sometimes, please tell me something because I want to know. Like my mind wants to know. So that is the end of my review. Thank y'all for listening. Thank y'all for supporting. Um, Again, if you guys didn't listen to the first episode with Running Point, I am working on the Celtic City uh, documentary, 9 parts, probably not getting it until freaking Easter. I did want to do some other documentaries. I did want to do the Jared Fogle documentary, but the more I listened and wrote notes, the more I looked at it like, this is disturbing. I don't want to cover it. So if you all have any like documentary suggestions, you can put them in the comments. It does have to align with what I like to watch. That's the only rule I have because I don't want to watch something boring and I get annoyed and I don't do it and then I don't want to hurt anybody. So thank y'all for listening and I'll talk to y'all later. Peace.